The email arrived at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was standing in my kitchen, half awake, waiting for the coffee maker to finish its cycle. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop, and I picked it up thinking it was a client. Maybe the Morrison Project. Maybe the permits office finally calling back about the zoning variance. It wasn't. The subject line read, "Your DNA results are ready." I'd almost forgotten about the test. 6 weeks earlier, my wife Sarah had bought us both kits as a Christmas gag gift. We'd spit into the tubes on New Year's Eve, laughing about it, wondering if we'd discover we were secretly royalty or related to famous outlaws. The whole thing had been a joke, a fun little distraction between champagne toasts. I tapped the notification. The app opened. A colorful wheel appeared, breaking down my ancestry. 47% Scandinavian, 31% British and Irish, 12% German, the rest scattered across Eastern Europe. Standard stuff for a guy from Minnesota whose grandparents came over from Norway and Sweden. I scrolled down, barely paying attention. Then I saw the box labeled DNA relatives. There was a match, a close one. The app said, possible twin or sibling, 100% shared DNA. I blinked, read it again. The name attached to the match was grayed out. Beneath it, a small notation. Deceased. Records indicate this relative passed away in 1990. My stomach did something strange, a cold twist, like ice water dripping down the inside of my chest. I don't have a twin brother. I don't have any siblings at all. I'm Marcus Cole. I'm 34 years old. I was born on March 15, 1990, at Hennepin County Medical Center in Minneapolis. I grew up as an only child. My parents, my mother Eleanor, and my father Richard, who passed away 3 years ago, never mentioned a sibling. Not once. Not in family stories, not in photo albums, not in drunken holiday confessions. There were no extra baby pictures, no tiny grave in the family plot, no whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Nothing. And yet, according to this database, this massive, sprawling network of genetic information compiled from millions of users around the world, I had a twin, a brother, someone who shared 100% of my DNA, and he died the same year I was born. Before I continue, I need you to understand something. I'm not a paranoid person. I don't see conspiracies in shadows. I run a successful architectural firm. I design buildings for a living, structures that have to stand up to inspections, to physics, to reality. My entire career is built on precision, on facts, on things that can be measured and verified. So when I saw that notification, I didn't panic. I didn't call my mother screaming. I didn't spiral. I stayed calm. I needed proof. I screenshot the results. Then I went into the settings and downloaded the raw data file. The actual genetic markers, the numerical codes that made up who I was at a molecular level. I saved it to 3 different locations: my phone, my laptop, and a cloud drive my wife didn't know about. Then I sat down at my kitchen table with my coffee, and I stared at the screen for a long time. The app offered no additional information, no name for my supposed twin, no cause of death, no explanation for why someone with identical DNA had been registered in a database decades before consumer genetic testing existed. That last part was what really bothered me. If my twin died in 1990, the year we were born, how did his DNA end up in a modern database? Who submitted it? And why did the system flag him as deceased instead of simply listing him as a match? I pulled up the app's FAQ section. I read about how they compiled their database, how they cross-referenced with public records, how certain government and medical databases were now interlinked for genealogical research. Then I found it. a small paragraph buried in the fine print. The company had partnered with several states to digitize historical vital records, including death certificates that contained DNA samples from hospital testing in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Minnesota was one of those states. My brother, if he existed, had died in a Minnesota hospital. His DNA had been preserved, and 34 years later, a computer algorithm had matched it to mine. That's when I realized something that made my blood turn cold. If the database knew my twin died in 1990 and my DNA matched his at 100%, then there had to be a death certificate, an official record, a document filed with the state that said, "On this date, this person died." A document my parents never told me existed. A document that would contain a name. I stood up. The coffee had gone cold in my cup. My wife was still asleep upstairs. Outside, the February sun was just starting to illuminate the frost on our windows. It was a normal Tuesday morning in the suburbs of Minneapolis. Birds at the feeder. Snow on the ground. The Hendersons' car backing out of their driveway across the street. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 10 minutes ago. But it wasn't. Because I was no longer Marcus Cole, only child of Richard and Eleanor Cole. I was Marcus Cole, survivor, and somewhere in the bowels of Minnesota's vital record system, there was a piece of paper that explained why I was the one who made it, and who my brother was before he stopped existing. I grabbed my keys. It was time to start digging. Let me back up. Because if this story is going to make any sense, you need to understand who I was before that email arrived. You need to understand why finding out I had a dead twin brother wasn't just a genealogical curiosity. It was a detonation at the foundation of everything I believed about my family, my identity, and my place in the world. My name is Marcus Cole. I was born on March 15, 1990 at 6:47 in the morning, according to the baby book my mother kept in her china cabinet. That baby book was a sacred artifact in our house. It contained my first footprint, a lock of my hair from my first haircut, my birth announcement from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. It did not contain any mention of a twin. I grew up in Edina, a quiet, wealthy suburb south of Minneapolis. My father, Richard Cole, was a commercial real estate developer who made his money in the 1980s buying up failing strip malls and converting them into mixed-use developments. He wasn't flashy about it. No sports cars, no vacation homes. He reinvested everything, built a portfolio, and by the time I was in high school, he was one of the most respected developers in the Twin Cities. My mother, Eleanor, was a different kind of person. She came from old money, not Minnesota old, but Connecticut old. Her family, the Harringtons, had been in textiles for generations before the industry moved overseas. By the time she met my father at a charity gala in 1985, the Harrington fortune had dwindled to a trust fund and a sense of superiority. She married my father, I think, because he represented stability. And he married her, I think, because she represented class. It was not a warm marriage. I don't mean they fought. They didn't. In 34 years, I never heard my parents raise their voices at each other. But there was a distance between them, a formality that I assumed was just how marriages worked when I was a kid. They slept in separate bedrooms. They attended events together, but rarely touched. When my father died 3 years ago, my mother didn't cry at the funeral. I remember noticing that, the absence of tears. At the time, I thought it was just her way. Eleanor Cole was not an emotional woman. She planned things. She controlled things. She served on charity boards and hosted fundraisers and made sure the Cole name appeared in all the right places for all the right reasons. What I didn't realize, not until that Tuesday morning, was that controlling things was not just a personality trait for my mother. It was a survival mechanism. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Growing up, I was a good kid. Not perfect, but good. I got decent grades, played hockey in high school, went to the University of Minnesota for architecture. I wasn't the type to sneak out or do drugs or crash cars into mailboxes. I think my parents were grateful for that. They'd seen enough of their friends' kids spiral to appreciate a son who came home on time and didn't require bail money. After college, I worked for a big firm downtown for a few years, learned the business, then took a risk and started my own practice at 27. Cole Architecture. I specialized in sustainable residential design, homes that looked beautiful and also didn't destroy the planet. It was a niche, but it worked. By 30, I had a staff of 8 and a reputation that brought clients from Chicago and Denver. I met Sarah Lindgren at a networking event when I was 29. She was a pediatric nurse at Children's Minnesota, the kind of woman who spent her days saving kids' lives and then went home to read novels and drink herbal tea. She was grounded in a way I'd never experienced. Her family was normal, divorced parents who still got along, 2 younger sisters, a grandmother who sent birthday cards with $20 bills inside. When I brought Sarah home to meet my mother, Eleanor was polite but distant. She asked Sarah about her education, her family background, her plans. It felt like an interview for a job Sarah hadn't applied for. On the drive home, Sarah said, "Your mom is intense." I laughed it off. She's just protective. But Sarah gave me a look I didn't understand at the time. "That's not protection," she said quietly. "That's control." We got married 2 years later, in a small ceremony at a lakeside venue in Stillwater. My mother made a toast that mentioned our family legacy 6 times and Sarah's name twice. My father smiled through the whole thing, but he looked tired, worn. He'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 3 months earlier, though I didn't find out until after the honeymoon. He was gone by that fall. At the funeral, I watched my mother stand at the grave like a statue. No tears, no trembling, just that perfectly composed face, her black dress perfectly pressed, her hands folded in front of her like she was posing for a portrait. I remember thinking, she looks like she's been rehearsing this her whole life. After my father died, I expected things to change with my mother. I thought maybe she'd soften, lean on me, let me see the real Eleanor Cole beneath all the polish. Instead, she retreated. She sold the family house in Edina and moved into a high-rise condo downtown, one of those places with doormen and valet parking and residents who nod politely but never learn each other's names. I visited her once a month, and every visit felt like an obligation she was barely tolerating. I told myself she was grieving. I told myself she needed space. I told myself that some people just process loss differently. I was wrong. She wasn't grieving Richard Cole. She was protecting a secret that went back 34 years, and I was about to rip it wide open. The first anomaly happened 2 weeks before the DNA test arrived. It was late January. I was helping my mother clean out a storage unit she'd rented after selling the house. Most of it was junk, old furniture, boxes of tax returns from the 1990s, Christmas decorations I vaguely remembered from childhood. But in the back corner, I found a filing cabinet. Locked. "What's in here?" I asked. My mother didn't even turn around. "Old paperwork. Your father's business files. Nothing interesting." "The key?" "Lost years ago. I've been meaning to have it cut open and thrown away." She said it casually. Too casually. I noticed she positioned herself between me and the cabinet for the rest of the afternoon. And when we left, She made a point of telling the storage facility manager in front of me that she was the only one authorized to access the unit. At the time, I thought she was just being Eleanor, controlling, paranoid, private. Now I wonder what was in that cabinet. The second anomaly happened the night before the DNA results arrived. Sarah and I were at my mother's condo for her monthly birthday dinner. She'd turned 71 in January, though she'd long since stopped acknowledging the specific number. We were sitting in her formal dining room, eating salmon that her private chef had prepared, when my mother's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Her face changed. It was subtle, a tightening around the eyes, a slight pursing of the lips. But I'd known my mother for 34 years. I knew what fear looked like on her face, even when she was trying to hide it. "Who is it?" I asked. "No one." She silenced the phone and set it face down on the table. "A telemarketer." But she didn't eat another bite for the rest of the meal. On the drive home, Sarah said, "Your mom was acting weird tonight." "She's always a little weird." "No, this was different. Did you see her face when she looked at her phone? She looked scared." I shrugged. Probably some scammer trying to steal her identity. Sarah didn't say anything else, but I saw her watching me in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, and I knew she wasn't satisfied with that explanation. Neither was I. The morning after I got the DNA results, I drove to the Hennepin County Government Center. It's a massive building downtown, 2 connected towers of brutalist concrete, the kind of architecture that was in fashion in the 1970s before everyone realized how soul-crushing it looked. I'd designed buildings in its shadow for years, but I'd never been inside for anything personal. The Vital Records office was on the 3rd floor, a small waiting room with plastic chairs and a ticket dispenser and a bored-looking clerk behind bulletproof glass. I took a ticket. I waited. When my number was called, I approached the window. "I need to request a death certificate," I said. The clerk didn't look up from her computer. "Name of the deceased?" "That's the problem. I don't know the name." Now she looked up. "You don't know who died?" "I know the approximate date, March 1990. I know the location, Hennepin County Medical Center. And I know the relationship. The deceased would be my twin brother." The clerk's eyebrows rose. "You're trying to find a death certificate for a sibling whose name you don't know?" "Yes." She studied me for a long moment. "Sir, are you sure you have a—" "I have DNA evidence." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot. A genetic testing company flagged a 100% match to my DNA. Someone who died in 1990. I'm trying to find out who it was. The clerk's expression softened slightly. She typed something into her computer. "I can search death records for Hennepin County in March 1990 for male infants. But without a name, I can only give you a list of possibilities. You'd have to request each one individually and pay the fee for each." "How many would there be?" She typed. Waited. 17 male infants died in Hennepin County in March 1990. 17. My stomach turned. "Can you narrow it down by date?" "I was born on March 15th. If my twin died around that time," more typing. 5 male infant deaths between March 10th and March 20th, 1990. "I'll take those." She printed out a form. $14 each. $70 total. Standard processing is 2 weeks. Expedited is 3 business days for an additional 20 per certificate. I handed her my credit card. Expedited. She took the payment and gave me a receipt. "The certificates will be mailed to the address you provided. Is there anything else?" I hesitated. Is there any way to find out who requested the DNA record? The one that ended up in the genetic testing database. The clerk shook her head. That's not information we'd have. You'd need to contact the testing company directly. And even then, I doubt they'd tell you. I nodded, took my receipt, walked out. In the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the metal doors. 5 death certificates. 5 tiny lives that ended before they really began. One of them was supposed to be my brother, and my parents had never said a word. That night, I didn't tell Sarah what I'd done. I told myself it was because I didn't want to worry her. I told myself I'd share everything once I had more information. But the truth was, I was scared. Not of what I might find. I was scared of what it would mean if my mother had been lying to me my entire life. The death certificates arrived 3 days later. I was working from home that morning, reviewing blueprints for a client in Wayzata, when I heard the mail truck pull up. I walked to the mailbox in my slippers, February cold biting at my ankles, and found the manila envelope wedged between a catalog and a credit card offer. I took it inside, locked myself in my home office, closed the blinds, then I opened it. 5 certificates. 5 small lives documented on government paper. The first 4 meant nothing to me. Different last names, different hospitals, different parents. But the 5th one. The 5th one had my mother's maiden name in the mother field, Eleanor Harrington, and in the father field, Richard Cole. The baby's name was Andrew Richard Cole. Born March 15, 1990 at 6:32 a.m., 15 minutes before me. Died March 17, 1990 at 3:14 p.m., cause of death. Complications arising from premature birth, respiratory distress syndrome. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. Andrew Richard Cole. My brother, my twin. He had a name. He had a birthday. He had lived for 2 days and 2 hours before his lungs gave out, and no one had ever told me. I sat in my office for a long time, holding that piece of paper. Outside, I could hear Sarah moving around in the kitchen making lunch, the normal sounds of our normal life. But nothing was normal anymore, because I had questions now. Big ones. Why had my parents hidden Andrew's existence? Was it grief? The unbearable weight of losing a child, buried so deep they couldn't speak of it? Or was it something else? And if they'd hidden his death, what else had they hidden? I looked at the death certificate again. The attending physician's name was listed. Dr. Harold Vance. The hospital was correct. Hennepin County Medical Center. And at the bottom, in a field I almost missed, there was a notation I didn't understand. See attached, supplemental report. I flipped through the envelope. There was no attached report, just the 5 certificates. I called the records office. A different clerk answered. I explained the situation, the missing supplemental report, the notation on the certificate. That notation usually means there was additional documentation filed at the time of death, she said. Medical notes, an autopsy report, something like that. Can I request it? You can. But for records that old, especially medical records, you might need to petition the hospital directly. We only have what was filed with the county. I thanked her and hung up. Then I opened my laptop and searched for Dr. Harold Vance. What I found made my stomach drop. Dr. Harold Vance had been the chief of neonatology at Hennepin County Medical Center from 1982 until 2003. He had retired, received numerous awards, published papers on infant respiratory care. He had died in 2019, 4 years before I started asking questions. Dead end. But then I noticed something in his obituary. A list of survivors. One of them was a woman named Linda Vance Reyes, his daughter. She lived in St. Paul. I wrote down her name. I didn't know if she'd talk to me. I didn't know if she'd know anything about a case from 34 years ago. But she was a thread, and threads could be pulled. That night, I made a decision. I was going to find out everything about Andrew Richard Cole. How he lived, how he died, and why his existence had been erased from my family's history. I wasn't going to tell my mother yet. I wasn't going to confront her until I had every piece of the puzzle. Because I'd learned something important from my father, the real estate developer, the man who built an empire on careful planning. You don't show your hand until you're ready to close the deal. And this deal was going to take everything I had. The first step was the hospital. Hennepin County Medical Center, or HCMC as locals call it, was a sprawling complex on the edge of downtown Minneapolis. It was a level 1 trauma center, a teaching hospital, and the place where thousands of Minnesota babies took their first breaths every year. It was also the place where my brother took his last. I called the medical records department the morning after I received the death certificates. A polite woman named Janet explained the process. For records more than 25 years old, I'd need to submit a formal request with proof of relationship. Processing could take 4 to 6 weeks. Is there any way to expedite it? I asked. This involves a family member. Everyone's request involves a family member, sir. I'm sorry, but we have protocols. I thanked her and hung up. Then I drove to the hospital anyway. I didn't have a plan, not a real one. I just knew that sitting in my house waiting for bureaucracy to work wasn't going to give me answers. The hospital's main entrance was busy. Nurses on break, patients in wheelchairs, families with worried faces. I walked past them all and found a directory near the elevator bank. Medical records was in the basement. But that's not where I went. Instead, I took the elevator to the 4th floor. Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find. The staff from 1990 would be retired or dead by now. The unit itself had probably been renovated a dozen times, but I needed to see it. I needed to stand in the place where my brother had spent his brief life. The NICU was behind locked doors, of course. You couldn't just walk in. But there was a small waiting area outside, a room with soft chairs and a coffee maker and walls covered in photos. Photos of babies. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They were arranged chronologically, going back decades. A celebration of lives saved, families made whole, tiny fighters who beat the odds. I scanned the wall, looking for 1990, and then I heard a voice behind me. "Can I help you?" I turned. A woman in scrubs was standing in the doorway. Late 60s, gray hair pulled back, an ID badge that said Volunteer Coordinator. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know I shouldn't be here. I was just looking." "Looking for what?" I hesitated. Then I told her the truth. "My twin brother died here in 1990. I just found out about him. I was hoping to—" I trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. The woman's expression changed, softened. "Come with me," she said. Her name was Dorothy Halverson. She'd been a NICU nurse at HCMC for 37 years before transitioning to volunteer work. She'd spent her career holding tiny hands, comforting terrified parents, and saying goodbye to babies who didn't make it. 1990, she said, sitting across from me in a small break room. That was a hard year. There was a flu outbreak that hit the unit. We lost several preemies. My brother was a preemie, respiratory distress syndrome. Dorothy nodded slowly. That was the biggest killer back then. We've gotten so much better at treating it. Surfactant therapy, better ventilators. But in 1990, if a baby's lungs weren't developed enough... She didn't finish. His name was Andrew Richard Cole. He died on March 17th. Dorothy closed her eyes. I could see her searching her memory, sifting through decades of faces and names. Cole, she murmured. There was a Cole. Twin boys. I remember because the mother... She stopped. What about the mother? Dorothy opened her eyes. I shouldn't be telling you this. Privacy laws. She's my mother. I'm the other twin. Whatever you remember, I need to know. Dorothy studied me for a long moment. Then she leaned forward. The mother was... difficult. I don't mean that unkindly. She was clearly traumatized, but she refused to see the baby. Refused to see Andrew. Wouldn't hold him. Wouldn't look at him. The father came every day, sat with the baby for hours, talked to him, sang to him. But the mother never came to the NICU. Not once. My blood was ice. Why? I don't know. We saw it sometimes. Parents who couldn't bond with a sick baby because they were too afraid of losing them. We thought maybe that's what it was. Protective detachment. But... Dorothy hesitated. There was something else. Something I overheard. I probably shouldn't have. I was changing out the monitors on the incubator next to your brother's, and Dr. Vance was on the phone at the nurse's station. I leaned forward. What did you hear? He was talking to someone about the mother. He said, and I remember this clearly because it was so strange. He said, she's insisting we don't list both names on the birth records. She wants the second twin's certificate filed separately, under a different account. And then he said something like, I can't do that. It's against protocol. They were born together. They have to be documented together. I stared at her. She wanted to hide that there were twins. That's what it sounded like. But I don't know if she succeeded. I was just a nurse. The paperwork was handled by administration. My mind was racing, filing birth certificates separately, hiding that there were twins. Why would my mother want to do that? What happened after Andrew died? I asked. Dorothy sighed. The father was devastated. He held the baby afterward, cried for hours. We had to call the chaplain. But the mother, she didn't come to the hospital at all that day. She was home with you, the surviving twin. She didn't come to say goodbye. She didn't say goodbye to her own son? No. And when the father left, he told us not to contact her directly about the death. He said he'd handle the paperwork himself. I remember thinking how sad it was that this man had just lost a child and was worried about paperwork. I sat back in my chair. My father. My quiet, dependable, unreadable father. He'd spent 2 days singing to a dying baby while my mother refused to look at him. And then he'd handled the paperwork. What paperwork? I thanked Dorothy. She gave me her phone number and told me to call if I needed anything else. I hope you find what you're looking for, she said. But Marcus, sometimes the truth isn't what we expect. Sometimes it's worse. Be prepared for that. I nodded. But I wasn't prepared. Not even close. That night, I told Sarah everything. We sat at our kitchen table, the same table where I'd first seen the DNA results, and I laid it all out. The test, the death certificate, Dorothy's story. Sarah listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hands. What do you think it means? She asked. I don't know, but something was wrong. My mother didn't want people to know she had twins. My father hid my brother's existence after he died, and they kept it secret for 34 years. Maybe it was just grief. Maybe they couldn't bear to talk about it. Then why hide the birth records? Why file things separately? That's not grief. That's planning. Sarah squeezed my hands. What are you going to do? I'm going to find out what really happened. And when I have all the facts, I'm going to confront my mother. Do you want me to come with you? For the research, I mean? I shook my head. Not yet. I need to do this on my own for now. But I'll keep you informed. She nodded. Be careful, Marcus. I've seen what secrets can do to families. What do you mean? In the hospital, we see it all the time. Families destroyed by things that happened decades ago. Secrets that fester. Sometimes the people keeping them don't even remember why anymore. They just know they can never let go. I thought about my mother, her controlled expressions, her formal dinners, her refusal to cry at my father's funeral. Maybe she wasn't cold. Maybe she was holding something so tightly that she'd forgotten how to feel anything else. The next morning, I went to see Linda Vance Reyes. She lived in a modest house in St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, a bungalow with a snow-covered garden and a wind chime on the porch. I'd found her address through a public records search and driven over without calling first. Sometimes surprise was the only way to get honest answers. I rang the doorbell. A dog barked inside. Then the door opened. Linda Vance Reyes was in her early 60s, with her father's eyes, sharp and intelligent behind wire-rimmed glasses. Can I help you? Can I help you? I need to speak with someone about a records request. Your firm requested medical records for Andrew Cole about 6 months ago. The receptionist's expression flickered. I'll need to check with one of our attorneys. Please have a seat. I sat. 10 minutes later, a man in a gray suit emerged from a hallway. Mr. Cole? I'm David Garrison. Please come back to my office. David Garrison was in his early 60s, with a practiced smile and watchful eyes. I understand you're asking about a records request we made, he said, settling behind his desk. Andrew Cole. He died in 1990. Your firm requested his medical records 6 months ago. That's correct. Why? Garrison steepled his fingers. I'm afraid I can't disclose the specifics. Attorney-client privilege. I'm Andrew's twin brother. Garrison's eyebrows rose. Twin brother? Our records indicated Andrew Cole had no surviving siblings. Those records are wrong. I'm Marcus Cole. Andrew was my identical twin. Garrison studied me for a long moment. Mr. Cole, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The records request we made wasn't about verifying siblings. It was about verifying parentage. Parentage? Specifically, we were trying to determine the biological father of a child born in 1990. I felt the room spin. You were trying to find out who Andrew's father was? Not Andrew's. We already knew about Andrew. Garrison leaned forward. We were trying to find out who your father was. I stared at him. How did you know I existed? Garrison hesitated. Then he made a decision. Our client contacted us 6 months ago. He claimed to be your biological father. He'd done a commercial DNA test, recreationally, like millions of people do, and received a match, a close match, someone who shared approximately 50% of his DNA. That's the percentage for a parent-child relationship. Exactly. But here's what made it unusual. The match was flagged as a potential twin. The DNA profile linked to a death record from 1990. Our client was confused. He didn't know about any twins. He didn't even know he had a child. My heart was pounding. So he came to you. He asked us to investigate. We pulled the death certificate for Andrew Cole. We found the attending physician's notes. Well, what was left of them? And we realized that if Andrew had a twin, that twin might still be alive. Did you find me? We found your name in the birth records. Marcus Elliot Cole, born March 15, 1990. Same hospital, same parents on paper. But we couldn't locate you directly. Privacy protections made it difficult. So why didn't your client reach out through the DNA company? Garrison sighed. He wanted to, but he was nervous. He's a prominent person. He didn't want to approach someone who might not know the truth about their parentage. He thought it could be traumatic. A prominent person? Yes. Who is he? Garrison shook his head. I can't tell you that, but I can tell you he's been waiting 6 months for confirmation that you exist. And now that you're here, he pulled out a business card and wrote a phone number on the back. He asked me to give you this if you ever found your way to our door. He wants to meet you. The decision is yours. I took the card. On the front, David Garrison, attorney at law. On the back, a phone number. And beneath it, a name. William Nash. I knew that name. Everyone in Minneapolis knew that name. William Nash was the CEO of Nash Industries, one of the largest privately held manufacturing companies in the Midwest. He'd built the business from his grandfather's small tool and die shop into a billion-dollar empire. He was a fixture on charity boards, a major donor to the arts, a man whose face appeared in the business section every few months. He was also married, had been for 40 years, to a woman who was not my mother. That night, I sat in my office with the business card in front of me. Sarah was asleep. The house was quiet, and I was trying to decide whether to call the number that might connect me to my biological father, William Nash. If this was true, if he was really my father, then everything I thought I knew about my family was built on lies layered on top of lies. My mother had slept with a stranger at a conference. That stranger was one of the richest men in Minnesota, and he'd never known I existed until 6 months ago. I thought about my father, Richard Cole, the man who raised me, the man who sang to a dying baby, the man who kept secrets to protect his family. Did he know? Did he know who my real father was? Or had my mother kept that from him too? I called the number the next morning. A woman answered. Professional, efficient. Nash Industries, Mr. Nash's office. My name is Marcus Cole. I was given this number by David Garrison. A pause. Please hold. 45 seconds later, a man's voice came on the line. Deep, measured, controlled. Marcus? Mr. Nash? Please, call me William. A pause. I've been waiting for this call. Then you know why I'm calling? I think so, but I'd like to hear it from you. I took a breath. I did a DNA test. It matched me to a deceased relative, my twin brother, Andrew. I never knew he existed. When I started investigating, I found out that the man who raised me wasn't my biological father. Your lawyer told me you might be. Silence on the line. I need to know if it's true, I said. So do I, William said. I've had your DNA profile for 6 months, but I haven't been able to confirm the match. I was hoping you'd agree to a proper paternity test. Supervised. Official. Yes. Good. I can have my assistant arrange. I have one condition. Name it. We meet first, before any tests. I want to look you in the eye when I decide if I trust you. Another pause. Fair enough. Are you free this afternoon? We met at 2 o'clock at a private dining room in the Minneapolis Club. William Nash was in his late 60s, tall and silver-haired, with the kind of posture that suggested military background or just decades of commanding rooms. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my first car. When he saw me, Something flickered in his eyes. "You look like her," he said quietly. "Who?" "Your mother, Eleanor. I remember her face, even after all these years." We sat across from each other at a table set for two. Coffee appeared. The waitstaff disappeared. "Tell me what you remember," I said. William sighed. It was January 1990. I was in Chicago for a manufacturers conference. My wife and I were going through a rough patch. Not an excuse, just context. I was drinking alone at the hotel bar when a woman sat down next to me. Eleanor Harrington. She didn't give me her last name, just Eleanor. We talked for hours. She was sad, I was lonely, and we both made a terrible mistake. One night, I went back to Minneapolis the next day. I never saw her again. I didn't even know her last name until 6 months ago, when I got the DNA match. Did you try to find her? At the time? No. I was ashamed. I'd cheated on my wife. I wanted to forget it ever happened. He paused. But a few months after that night, I saw a birth announcement in the Minneapolis paper. Cole, twin boys. And I wondered, but I told myself it was impossible. A one-time encounter? The odds were astronomical. Yes. So I put it out of my mind. For 34 years. Until the DNA test. I took it because my grandchildren wanted me to. They were curious about their heritage. I never expected to find you. He looked at me with eyes that I now realized were the same shade of gray as mine. I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm sorry for what I did, and I'm sorry for what it's cost you. If I'd known, you didn't, and my mother clearly didn't want you to. No, she didn't. We sat in silence for a moment. What do you want from this? I asked. Honestly, I don't know. I'm 70 years old. I have a wife, 2 grown children, 4 grandchildren, a legacy I've spent my whole life building. Finding out I have another son, one who's lived his entire life not knowing who he was, it's complicated. For me too. I understand. But I think we both deserve the truth. A confirmed paternity test, official results. Whatever you want to do with that information afterward is your choice. And if I'm your son? William leaned forward. Then I'd like to know you. Not publicly. I'm not asking you to show up at family dinners or pretend we have a relationship we don't. But privately, as 2 people who share something they didn't ask for. I studied him. This man who might be my father. Okay, I said. We'll do the test. The results came back 5 days later, 99.98% probability that William Nash was my biological father. I sat in my office and read the report 3 times. Then I called Sarah. It's confirmed, I said. William Nash is my father. How do you feel? I don't know. I thought I'd feel something. Angry, relieved, complete. But I just feel tired. That makes sense. You've been through a lot. There's something else. What? I think my mother owes me more answers. About that night. About why she kept this secret. About what she did to cover it up. Are you going to confront her again? Yes. But this time, I'm going in prepared. I spent the next week building a file. Everything I'd learned, every document I'd gathered, every piece of evidence that told the story of my brother's brief life and my own hidden origin. The death certificate, the paternity tests, both the old one from 1990 and the new one from William Nash. Dr. Vance's journal entry, the records from Margot Chen showing the data breach, the timeline of my mother's cover-up. I organized it all. I made copies. I stored them in 3 different locations. And then I made an appointment to see my mother. She met me at the door of her condo wearing a silk blouse and pearls, looking as composed as ever. Marcus, you said you wanted to talk. I do. She led me to the living room. The same room where she'd told me about the paternity test. The same view of the downtown skyline. I sat on the couch. She sat across from me. I know you're upset about what I told you, she said. But I hope you understand. William Nash, I said. Her face went pale. How did you? He found me. Through the DNA database. He's been looking for me for 6 months. My mother's hands were shaking. Marcus, you can't. He can't. We did a paternity test. He's my biological father. 99.98%. She closed her eyes. This is what I was afraid of. This is why I wanted those records destroyed. Because you didn't want me to know I was the son of a billionaire instead of a real estate developer? No. She opened her eyes. Because I didn't want his family to know. I stared at her. What are you talking about? William Nash was married in 1990. He's still married. He has 2 children, legitimate children, heirs to his company, his fortune, his name. If word got out that he had another son, I'm not interested in his money. It doesn't matter. His family would be. They'd see you as a threat, a complication, a scandal that could destroy everything they've built. That's not my problem. It could become your problem very quickly. My mother leaned forward. Marcus, you don't understand these people. The Nashes are not nice. They're not reasonable. They protect what's theirs with lawyers and investigators and tactics you can't imagine. Are you saying they'd try to hurt me? I'm saying they'd try to make you disappear. Not physically, legally, financially. They'd find every weakness you have and exploit it. They'd make your life impossible until you agreed to go away. I sat back. Did William tell you this? When you met him in Chicago? He didn't have to. I knew his reputation. He was ruthless even then. So you hid my existence to protect me from my own father's family. I hid your existence to protect all of us. You, me, Richard, our family. If William had known about you, everything would have been different. He might have wanted custody. He might have wanted involvement. And his wife is not a forgiving woman. You don't know any of that for certain. No. But I know what I've seen over the years. The Nash family has destroyed people who got in their way. Competitors, business partners. I wasn't going to let that happen to my son. I looked at my mother, this woman who had lied to me my entire life, who had covered up affairs and bribed doctors and buried the existence of a dead child. And I realized something. She wasn't a villain. She was a coward. She'd made a mistake 34 years ago, and instead of facing it, she'd built a fortress of lies around it. Every decision she'd made since then, the coldness, the control, the refusal to feel anything, it was all about keeping the walls intact. And now the walls were coming down. What about Andrew? I asked. What about him? Did he die because of this? Because of the cover-up? My mother's face crumpled. No. Andrew died because his lungs didn't work. It was premature birth, nothing more. Nothing I did. You didn't hold him. You didn't say goodbye. You let him die alone with nurses while you stayed home with me. I couldn't face him. He was Richard's son, the son that was supposed to live, and I couldn't look at him without seeing everything I'd done wrong. So you let him die thinking no one loved him. Richard loved him. Richard was there. But you weren't. She had no answer for that. I stood up. I'm done, Mom. Done? Done pretending this family is something it isn't. Done accepting your versions of events. Done letting you control the narrative. Marcus, please. I'm going to meet William's family. I'm going to tell them who I am. Not to get their money or their approval. I don't want either. But because they deserve to know the truth, even if you don't think so. They'll destroy you. Maybe. Or maybe they'll surprise both of us. I walked to the door. Marcus. My mother's voice was small, broken. I did love you. I know it doesn't seem like it, but everything I did was because I loved you. I turned back. No, Mom. Everything you did was because you were afraid. There's a difference. I left. The next 2 weeks were preparation. I didn't contact William Nash right away. I didn't rush into anything. Instead, I did what I'd learned to do from years of designing buildings. I studied the terrain before breaking ground. I researched the Nash family. William's wife was named Catherine. She came from old Minneapolis money. Her grandfather had been a lumber baron, her father a bank president. She sat on the boards of 3 museums and chaired the city's largest charity gala every spring. She and William had 2 children. Their son, Thomas, was 42 and served as COO of Nash Industries. He was the heir apparent, the one being groomed to take over when William retired. Their daughter, Rebecca, was 39 and ran a venture capital firm in San Francisco. She was divorced, no kids, rarely seen in Minneapolis. The family image was perfect, polished, untouchable. But when I dug deeper, cracks appeared. Thomas Nash had been sued twice by former business partners. Both cases had been settled out of court with ironclad NDAs. There were whispers about aggressive tactics, about deals that left people ruined. Catherine Nash had fired 3 personal assistants in the past 2 years. 2 of them had left the state afterward, and William himself had a reputation for being charming in public and ruthless in private. My mother's warnings didn't seem so paranoid anymore. But I wasn't backing down. I called William on a Friday afternoon. "I want to meet your family," I said. Silence on the line. "Marcus, I'm not sure that's a good idea." "I thought you wanted to know me." "I do, but privately. Introducing you to Catherine, to Thomas and Rebecca, that changes everything." "Maybe it needs to change. You don't understand what you're asking." "Then help me understand." William sighed. "My family is complicated. Catherine knows about that night in Chicago. I told her years ago when the guilt became too much. She forgave me, or claimed to. But if she finds out there was a child, that I have another son, I don't know how she'll react." "What about Thomas? Rebecca?" "Thomas would see you as a threat to his inheritance. Rebecca..." He paused. "Rebecca is unpredictable. She might embrace you, or she might try to destroy you. I genuinely don't know. So you want to keep me a secret. I want to protect you. And yes, protect my family too. Is that so wrong?" I thought about it. "You've had 6 months to process this. I've had 3 weeks. I don't want to hide anymore. I've spent my whole life being hidden. By my mother, by the lies she told, by the secrets she kept. I'm done." "What exactly are you proposing?" "A family meeting. All of us. You, me, Catherine, Thomas, Rebecca. We sit down together and I explain who I am. After that, whatever happens, happens." "That's insane." "Maybe, but it's also honest. Something neither of our families has been in a long time." William was quiet for a long moment. "Let me think about it," he said finally. "I need to prepare Catherine. Talk to the kids. This isn't something you can drop on people without warning." "Fine. But I'm not waiting forever." "I understand." 3 days later, William called back. "Catherine agreed to meet you. So did Thomas. Rebecca is flying in from San Francisco next week." "When?" "Next Saturday, noon, our home in Wayzata." Wayzata, the wealthiest suburb in the state, where the old money families had their estates on Lake Minnetonka. I'll be there. Marcus, I hope you know what you're doing. So do I. That week I prepared. I gathered every document I'd collected. The death certificate, the paternity tests, Dr. Vance's journal entry, the timeline of events. I wrote out what I wanted to say, not a script. I didn't want to sound rehearsed, but an outline. Key points I needed to make. And I called Sarah. I want you to come with me. She was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? This seems like something you should do alone. No, I need you there. Whatever happens, I need someone I trust. Okay, I'll be there. Saturday arrived cold and clear. Sarah and I drove to Wayzata in our Volvo, past frozen lakes and bare trees, past houses that got larger and larger the closer we got to the water. The Nash estate was at the end of a private road, stone pillars, iron gates, a security camera that swiveled to track our car. The gates opened. We drove through. The house was enormous, a stone and timber mansion that looked like it had been plucked from the English countryside and dropped on the shore of Lake Minnetonka. There were at least 20 rooms, maybe more. A 6-car garage, a guest house visible in the back. A uniformed staff member met us at the door. Mr. and Mrs. Cole, please follow me. We were led through a marble foyer, past oil paintings and antique furniture, into a formal living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the frozen lake. The Nash family was waiting. William stood by the fireplace, looking uncomfortable in a way I'd never seen before. Catherine sat on a silk-upholstered settee, her posture rigid, her expression unreadable. Thomas stood behind his mother, arms crossed, face hostile, and Rebecca sat in an armchair near the window, studying me with cool interest. Marcus, William said, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. Catherine spoke next. Her voice was ice. Shall we dispense with the pleasantries? You're here because you claim to be my husband's illegitimate child. I'd like to see your evidence. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. Here. Paternity tests. The original from 1990 and a new one from last month. Birth records. Death certificate for my twin brother. Medical notes from the attending physician. Catherine didn't take the folder. She nodded at Thomas. He stepped forward, grabbed the folder, and started flipping through it. These could be faked, he said. They weren't. How do we know that? Your father ordered the new paternity test himself. Ask him. Thomas looked at William. It's authentic, William said quietly. I had my own lawyer verify it. Thomas's jaw tightened. So it's true. You had an affair 34 years ago and got some woman pregnant. Yes. And now her bastard son is here to... What? Claim his inheritance? Demand a place at the family table? Thomas, William started. No, I cut in. I'm not here for your money. I don't want your inheritance. I have my own business, my own life, my own family. I gestured at Sarah, who was standing next to me. This is my wife. We're doing fine. Then why are you here? Rebecca spoke for the first time. Her voice was measured, curious. Because I spent 34 years not knowing who I was. My mother lied to me. The man I thought was my father wasn't. I had a twin brother who died before I knew he existed. I'm here because I deserve the truth, and so do all of you. The room was silent. Catherine stood. She walked toward me, slowly, deliberately, and stopped 3 feet away. You think I don't know about that night in Chicago? She said. I've known for years. William confessed to me when the guilt became too much for him. I forgave him because he promised it was a one-time mistake. He promised there were no consequences. I was the consequence. Yes. And now you're standing in my living room, threatening to upend everything I've built. I'm not threatening anything. Your existence is a threat. Her voice rose. You think the world won't find out? You think our competitors, our board members, our social circle won't use this against us? A secret son? An affair? It's a scandal waiting to happen. It's the truth waiting to be acknowledged. Catherine laughed, a cold, brittle sound. Truth. How quaint. In my experience, truth is just another weapon, and you're wielding it whether you intend to or not. The next hour was chaos. Thomas accused me of being a con artist. Rebecca asked detailed questions about the DNA evidence. William tried to keep the peace. Catherine made increasingly hostile comments. Through it all, Sarah stayed by my side, silent but steady. Finally, I'd had enough. I didn't come here to fight, I said. I came here to be honest. You can accept me or reject me, I don't really care. But I'm not disappearing. I exist. I'm William's son. And that's going to be true whether you like it or not. What do you want from us? Rebecca asked. Acknowledgement. Not publicly. I don't want a press conference or a family announcement. Just, acknowledgement. That I'm real. That I matter. Thomas snorted. You want us to validate your feelings? This isn't therapy. No, it's family, which is supposed to be better than therapy, but clearly isn't in your case. Thomas stepped toward me. Watch your mouth. Thomas. William's voice was sharp. Enough. Thomas stopped, but his eyes promised this wasn't over. We left the Nash estate an hour later. Nothing had been resolved. No agreements had been made. But the truth was out there now, in the open, acknowledged by the people who needed to acknowledge it. Sarah and I drove home in silence. Finally, she spoke. That was horrible. Yes. Do you regret it? No. I needed to face them. I needed them to see me as a real person, not just a problem to be managed. What do you think happens now? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe they'll leave me alone and pretend this never happened. Or maybe they won't. Or maybe they won't. 3 days later, I found out which option they'd chosen. I was at the office reviewing designs for a project in Duluth when my assistant buzzed me. Marcus, there's a man here to see you. He says it's urgent. Who is it? He won't give his name, but he says he's from Nash Industries. My stomach tightened. Send him in. The door opened. A man in a dark suit walked in. Mid-40s, buzz cut. The build of someone who used to be military. Mr. Cole, I'm Keith Reynolds. I work for the Nash family. What do you want? He closed the door behind him. I want to make you an offer. I told them I don't want their money. This isn't about money. This is about resolution. He sat down across from my desk without being invited. The Nash family has concerns about your presence in their lives. They believe you may become a liability, intentionally or unintentionally. They've asked me to help them, manage the situation. Manage how? Reynolds smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. There are two options. Option 1. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, accept a one-time payment of $5 million, and agree never to contact the Nash family again. You don't speak about your biological connection to anyone, ever. You disappear from their lives completely. And option 2? Reynolds leaned forward. Option 2 is that we make your life very difficult. We dig into your business finances. We find code violations in your projects, tax irregularities in your filings. We question your professional reputation. We make sure no one in this city wants to work with you again." I stared at him. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm informing you of the consequences of your choices. The Nash family protects its interests. You can be rewarded for cooperating, or you can learn what happens to people who don't." I thought about my mother's warnings, about the people the Nashes had destroyed. Then I thought about Sarah, about my brother Andrew, who had died before anyone could threaten him, about all the lies and cover-ups that had brought me to this moment. "Get out of my office," I said. Reynolds didn't move. "Think carefully, Mr. Cole. This offer won't last forever." I said, "Get out." He stood slowly. "You have 72 hours to decide." He left. I sat alone in my office for a long time. Then I picked up the phone and called the only person who could help me. Detective Hannah Park was an old friend. We'd met years ago when she was investigating a contractor who'd been embezzling from one of my clients. She was smart, honest, and completely unafraid of powerful people. "Marcus, long time no hear. What's wrong?" "I need your advice. Off the record." "I'm listening." I told her everything. The DNA test, my mother's lies, William Nash, the meeting, the threat. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "The guy who came to see you." "Reynolds. I know that name. He's a fixer, ex-Secret Service, now a private contractor. He does dirty work for rich families." "What kind of dirty work?" "The kind that can't be traced. Intimidation, surveillance, making problems go away." "Can you help me?" "Help you how?" "Stop them, protect myself, make sure they can't destroy me." Hannah sighed. "Marcus, these people have resources you can't imagine. Going head-to-head with them." "I'm not going head-to-head. I'm going underground. I want to build a case. Document everything. Make sure that if they come after me, the whole world finds out what they did." "That's dangerous." "So is rolling over." Another pause. "Okay. I can put you in touch with someone, a lawyer who specializes in exactly this kind of thing. Her name is Victoria Chen. She's taken on powerful families before, and she doesn't back down." "When can I meet her?" "Tomorrow. I'll set it up." Victoria Chen worked out of a small office in a converted warehouse in the North Loop. She was in her 50s, sharp-featured, with steel-gray hair and an intensity that reminded me of a coiled spring. "Detective Park told me your situation," she said. "It's complicated, but not impossible. What do you recommend?" "First, we document everything. Every interaction with the Nash family, every communication, every threat. We create a record that can't be denied or destroyed. And then we prepare a counter-strategy. If they come after your business, we make sure the media finds out. If they try to intimidate you, we go public with their tactics. We make the cost of attacking you higher than the cost of leaving you alone." "Is that enough?" Victoria smiled grimly. "Against most people? Yes. Against the Nashes? We'll see. What else can we do?" "We find leverage, something they don't want exposed, something that makes them as vulnerable as they're trying to make you." "I don't have anything like that." "Not yet. But people like the Nashes don't get that powerful without cutting corners. There's always something. We just need to find it." Over the next month, I became an investigator. With Victoria's guidance, I hired a forensic accountant to look into Nash Industries. He found irregularities, nothing illegal exactly, but suggestive. Shell companies, offshore accounts, transactions that didn't quite add up. I hired a private investigator to look into Reynolds and his methods. He found connections to other cases, other families who had been intimidated, other problems that had been managed. And I kept meeting with William Nash. That surprised me. He kept reaching out, wanting to talk, apologizing for his family's behavior. He claimed he hadn't authorized Reynolds's visit. He claimed he wanted to protect me, not destroy me. I didn't know if I believed him, but I kept meeting him anyway, because I was building something, a trap, a case, a record of everything that was happening, and when the time was right, I was going to spring it. The Nash family's annual charity gala was scheduled for the first Saturday in April. It was the biggest social event of the Minneapolis spring. 500 guests, black tie, held at the Walker Art Center. The theme this year was New Beginnings, which I found grimly ironic. I wasn't invited, of course, but I was going anyway. Victoria had secured a ticket through a donor who owed her a favor. Sarah and I would attend as guests of the Walker, not the Nash family. We would be invisible in the crowd, 2 more wealthy faces among hundreds. But at the right moment, we would become very visible indeed. The night of the gala, I dressed in my best suit. Sarah wore a gown she'd bought specifically for the occasion. Emerald green, elegant, understated. We looked like we belonged. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "I love you." "I love you too." We drove to the Walker. The gala was everything I expected. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, a string quartet playing in the corner. The city's wealthiest families mingled and laughed, pretending to care about the charity, while really just wanting to be seen. I spotted the Nashes immediately. William and Catherine stood near the entrance, greeting guests like royalty. Thomas was nearby, schmoozing with business contacts. Rebecca was at the bar, looking bored. None of them noticed me. Not yet. Sarah and I drifted through the crowd, making small talk, biding our time. I had a speech prepared, not for the gala, but for afterward, a press release that Victoria had helped me draft, a document that laid out everything, my identity, the Nash family's attempts to silence me, the evidence of their intimidation tactics. If they didn't back off tonight, the press release would go out tomorrow. But first, I wanted to give them one last chance. At 9 o'clock, Catherine Nash took the stage to deliver her annual speech. She thanked the donors, praised the charities, talked about the importance of giving back. She was polished, professional, utterly convincing. She didn't mention anything about a secret son. Of course she didn't. But when she finished speaking, I was ready. "Excuse me," I said to Sarah. "I need to do something." "Be careful." I walked toward the stage. The crowd parted around me, not because they knew who I was, but because I was moving with purpose. People always make way for confidence. I reached the steps just as Catherine was descending. "Mrs. Nash." She turned. When she saw my face, her expression froze. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk. One last time, before this becomes public." Catherine's eyes darted around the room, searching for Reynolds, for security, for anyone who could make me disappear. "Not here," she hissed. "Follow me." She led me to a private room behind the main gallery. William was already there, along with Thomas and Rebecca. Reynolds stood by the door. "How did you get in?" Thomas demanded. "I bought a ticket, like any other donor." "This is harassment." "No, this is a family meeting. The second one, actually. I hope this one goes better than the last." Catherine stepped forward. "What do you want?" "The same thing I wanted before. acknowledgement, acceptance, the right to exist without being threatened. We offered you money. I don't want your money. I want you to stop trying to destroy me. Catherine laughed. We haven't done anything to you. Not yet. But I have records of everything. Reynolds's visit, the threats, the forensic accountant who found irregularities in your offshore accounts, the private investigator who connected Reynolds to 3 other families you've intimidated. The room went quiet. That's a bluff, Thomas said. Is it? I pulled out my phone and showed them the press release. This goes to every major news outlet tomorrow morning unless we reach an agreement tonight. William looked pale. Marcus, you don't want to do this. You're right, I don't. But you didn't give me a choice. Rebecca spoke for the first time. What kind of agreement? Simple. You leave me alone. No more threats, no more surveillance, no more attempts to destroy my business. In exchange, I don't go public. And your existence? Catherine asked. Do you expect us to just accept you? I don't expect anything from you. You can pretend I don't exist for all I care, but you can't make me disappear. And if you try, everyone will know why. The family exchanged glances. We need time to discuss this, William said. You have until midnight. After that, the release goes out. I turned to leave. Marcus. It was Rebecca's voice. Wait. I stopped. Why are you doing this? Really? You could take the money and walk away. Live a comfortable life. Why fight us? I turned back. Because I spent 34 years being lied to, being hidden, being treated like a problem to be managed. I'm done letting other people decide who I am. I looked at each of them in turn. I'm Marcus Cole. I'm a son, a husband, an architect. I'm William Nash's biological child. Those are facts. You can accept them or fight them, but you can't change them. I left the room. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from William. We agree to your terms. No more threats. Please don't release the document. I showed Sarah. Is it over? She asked. For now. 2 months later, things had settled into a strange new normal. William and I met occasionally for coffee. He told me about his life, his regrets, his hopes for whatever time he had left. I told him about my work, my marriage, my plans. We weren't close. We might never be, but we were something. A connection that existed, that mattered. Catherine never spoke to me again. Thomas avoided me at industry events. Rebecca sent me a birthday card, which surprised me. She'd looked up the date on her own. My mother and I talked twice. Both times were awkward, painful, unresolved. I didn't know if we'd ever have a real relationship again, but I wasn't hiding anymore, and that was enough. 6 months after the gala, I got a phone call from Linda Vance Reyes. Marcus, I found something. What? My father's files, the ones that were supposed to be missing. They weren't destroyed. They were in a storage unit that no one thought to check. His nurse's notes, the lab work, everything from 1990. My heart raced. Andrew's records? Yes, and something else. A letter my father wrote but never sent. To whom? To you. Linda brought the letter to my office that afternoon. It was handwritten, dated August 2003, the year Dr. Vance retired. Dear Marcus, if that's still your name, I've spent 13 years wondering about you. Wondering if you grew up happy. Wondering if you ever learned the truth. I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if it's right to tell you. But I'm an old man now, and secrets feel heavier as the years go by. Your mother did something terrible. Not by having you. You were innocent in all of this. but by hiding you, by pretending your brother never existed, by trying to make me complicit in her deception. I want you to know that I refused. I kept the records. I kept the truth alive, even if it was only in my files. And I want you to know something else. Your brother loved you. That sounds strange. He was only 2 days old. How could he know what love was? But in those 2 days, when I watched him struggle to breathe, I saw him turn toward the isolette next to him, toward you. Every time he moved toward you. You were his family, his other half. And even though he never got to know you, he knew you were there. I hope someday you find out who you are. I hope you learn to carry both parts of yourself, the one who lived and the one who didn't. I hope you find peace. And I hope you know that you were always loved, even in the beginning, even before anyone knew what to call you. Dr. Harold Vance. I read the letter 3 times. Then I cried. Sarah held me while I wept. For Andrew, for the father I'd lost, for the father I'd found, for all the years of silence that could never be taken back. When I was done, she asked, "What now?" I don't know, but I think I need to go somewhere. Where? The cemetery, where Andrew is buried. I'd found the grave a few months earlier, during my investigation. Andrew Richard Cole was buried in Lakewood Cemetery, the oldest cemetery in Minneapolis, in a small plot near the back. There was no headstone, just a flat marker that was easy to miss. I'd visited once before, alone, not knowing what to feel. Now I went again. This time I brought flowers. I knelt by the marker and read the inscription. Andrew Richard Cole. March 15th, 1990. March 17th, 1990. Beloved son. Hey, brother, I said. I know we never met. Not really, but I've been thinking about you a lot lately. The wind rustled through the bare trees. I found out some things about who I am, about who our parents were. It's a mess, honestly, but I think I'm figuring it out. I placed the flowers on the grave. I wanted you to know that you're not forgotten. I know Mom tried to erase you. I know she couldn't face what happened. But I found you. I know your name. I know you existed. I touched the cold stone. I wish I could have known you. I wish we could have grown up together, fought over toys, shared secrets, covered for each other with Mom and Dad. I wish you'd gotten to see what life could be. A bird sang somewhere overhead. But maybe you see it anyway. Maybe you've been watching this whole time. If so, I hope I made you proud. I stood up. Goodbye, Andrew. I'll come back. I promise. I walked away. That night, Sarah and I sat on our porch, watching the sun set over the Minneapolis skyline. How do you feel? She asked. Different, not better exactly, but lighter. You've carried a lot this year. I know, but I think I'm finally putting some of it down. She leaned against me. What did you learn from all of this? I thought about the question. I learned that families are complicated, that love and lies can exist in the same heart, that the people who are supposed to protect you can also be the ones who hurt you most. That's pretty dark. Maybe. But I also learned something else. What? That truth is worth fighting for, even when it's painful, even when it changes everything. Because the alternative, living in a lie, pretending to be someone you're not, that's worse. Sarah nodded slowly. I think you're right. I also learned that I'm lucky. How so? I have you. I have my work. I have a life I built myself, not one that was handed to me or constructed out of lies. Whatever my DNA says, Whatever name is on my birth certificate, I'm the person I chose to be. Marcus Cole. Marcus Cole. She kissed me. I'm glad you're who you are. Me too. If you're listening to this story, maybe you've done a DNA test too. Maybe you've discovered something unexpected, a sibling you didn't know about, a parent who wasn't who you thought, a family secret that changed everything. Or maybe you're just curious about the things that hide in our genes, in our records, in the bureaucracies that track our lives from birth to death. Either way, I want to leave you with this. You are not your DNA. You are not the circumstances of your birth. You are not the lies your parents told or the truths they couldn't face. You are the choices you make, the relationships you build, the life you create out of whatever raw materials you're given. That's what I learned when I did a DNA test for fun and found out my twin brother died in 1990. I don't have a twin brother anymore. But I have a story, a truth, a family I'm building, piece by piece, with the woman I love. And that's enough. That's more than enough. If this story resonated with you, if you faced your own family secrets or identity questions, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Share your experience. We're all navigating this strange journey together. And if you want more stories like this, hit that subscribe button. There's always another truth waiting to be uncovered. Until next time. Marcus.